So, to start, a 13-year-old female at the time was going out with a few friends for Halloween. It was a tradition that stopped after that night, but we would all get together and go out and have a good time, and then head to one of our houses to watch horror movies until the sunrise the next morning. For some stupid reason, these 6 of us decided to split up. So Sarah, I'm not using the real names, and Alex went the one way towards Sarah's house because she was tired. Alice and Jessica went to head towards some more houses to stop at before meeting up with us again, and Rachel and I went off in the opposite direction towards the school. Rachel told me that she wasn't feeling good and that she wanted to head back to Alice's place. So she went back towards Alice's house, leaving me alone. It was around 10 o'clock at night and I was getting cold, so I thought it was a good idea to cut through the park to go to Alice's house. We had decided beforehand to meet back at her house once we were all done. As I was getting close to the park, I could hear some boys laughing about something. I thought it was nothing and just ignored them. When I got to the walkway, I saw about 4 boys standing in the park. One clearly had something in his hand. I couldn't tell what it was, and I started walking faster to pass them. They all started walking to the path and blocked me. For reference, I went as Amy Lee, so I had a short, poofy, strapless dress on and high heels. There was no way I was going to outrun them. They started saying stuff like, "Hey, where you off to? Why don't you come say hi to us? What's a girl like you doing here so late?" I gave short answers and tried backing away. I don't really remember how I got away, but I'm pretty sure it's because I sacked one of them. I just remember running like crazy in my crappy heels back to Alice's place. When I got there, all of the other girls were crying. Alex had already gone home, but Alice and Jessica and Rachel were on Alice's front lawn and asked me if I saw those guys in the park. Alice and Jessica had dressed as boys for that year, and apparently those guys tried to fight them. When they figured out they were girls, they were grabbing at them and making comments. They got away because Alice held her phone up telling them that she was going to call the cops. We decided that we weren't going to go out for Halloween after that, and eventually we all stopped talking. But before that, we never talked about that night to anyone. In my neighborhood, we don't tend to have many trick-or-treaters. I live only 15 minutes or so from the rich part of town, and most kids between the ages of 8 or 14 beg their parents to drive them over, as some people even give away gift cards depending on how generous they're feeling. I just hand out bagged candy from the local Walmart, and so do my neighbors. So all I ever really get is young kids whose parents take them for the fun of it, and not for the candy itself. This year, I got comfy on my couch around 5:30, and waited for the young kids to start knocking. I'm 17 and quite small, but Halloween has always been my favorite holiday, and I've been handing out candy for many years without my parents home. All was well and good, and by 7:30, most of the traffic had passed, but I decided to keep my lights on until 8:30, in case anyone came back from the other part of town, and wanted to score a few more Kit Kats before tucking in for the night. It was around 8:50, and I was hoping for one more person to knock so I could give them the rest of what was in my bowl. I'm a pretty healthy eater, so I didn't need the temptation of leftover candy. When I saw someone peeking through the windows adjacent to my door. My lights were clearly on, and it's not like I was sitting in the dark, but all of the upstairs lights were off, so I didn't think much of it when I walked over to the door. When I opened the door, still no one had knocked. A very large man, anywhere from 18 to maybe early 20s, was facing me. He was in some sort of feminine anime costume, and his overall vibe was very uncomfortable and off. I grabbed my candy, but I felt too uncomfortable making conversation with him, and offering him the bowl as he was only speaking to me in Japanese. Part of the costume, I guess, and I just really didn't know what was going on. It's hard to explain, but I could feel it in my gut, something was off with him. I handed him some candy and was so nervous that I actually ended up dropping a few pieces, which he very quickly scooped down to pick up and used as an opportunity to stand back up uncomfortably close to me, almost in my doorway. I quickly closed the door, not even saying have a good night or anything like I usually do. And when I started to turn the lock, I saw out of the corner of my eye another man, probably 18 or 19, out of costume, peeking into one of my windows in a room further down in my house but still connected to the front area. The man at the front door must have said something to him because, in enough time for me to step back, they both very quickly ran together through my grass and towards the exit to my neighborhood, not stopping at a single other house until they were out of sight. I know this seems very anticlimactic and nothing actively happened to me, but I've never had someone older than 15 knock on my door in all the years I've lived here, and I have no idea how long they were standing there. So, random men who peeked into the windows of a 17-year-old girl's house. Let's not meet. It was my turn to take my kids trick-or-treating. The previous year was my wife's, and we trade back and forth every year. My son and daughter are aged 7 and 9. Usually, I stay on the street while my kids go up to the different houses to collect candy. After about half an hour of walking around, we came to one of the more popular hotspots for candy collecting, a main street in the neighborhood. Lots of really cool decorations and animatronics on people's lawns. So, I became a bit distracted and stopped watching my kids closely. At one point, they came back from a house accompanied by another girl about the same height as my daughter. She was wearing a weird homemade mask, like a cardboard cutout or something. My daughter asked me if she could trick-or-treat with us, so I said sure, and we carried on together as a group. I didn't know who this girl was, so I figured it was just a friend from school. As we continued, I started to notice a large man trailing us. He was wearing some sort of angry cat mask. It's kind of creepy, to be honest. I thought that maybe he was the father of the girl, so I tried to start up some small chat with him. I said something like, "Nice weather, huh?" But he didn't respond. He just stood there staring at me, while our kids went up the stairs to the next house. I tried again, asking, "Hey, is that your daughter?" He nodded but didn't say anything. I figured he just wasn't in the mood for chatting, so I stopped trying. We carried on for about another 15 minutes, until suddenly my kids came up to me and said they wanted to go home. This surprised me as we hadn't been out for too long and their bags were only about a third full. In any case, I agreed, waved goodbye at the man in the cat mask and his daughter, and started on our way home. The weird thing is that when I glanced back, the man and his daughter were just standing there, staring at us. I checked one more time as we turned the corner, and they were still standing there, not having moved at all. At this point, I decided to ask my kids, "So, who was that girl?" My daughter looked up at me with a confused look on her face. "She's your friend," my daughter replied. I asked her what she meant. Apparently the girl with the cardboard mask approached them and said she was a friend of mine. She told my daughter she was too shy to ask me if she could join us to trick-or-treat, and wanted my daughter to ask me instead. I laughed at the story and replied to my daughter, "Why would you think she was my friend? I don't have any children friends." What my daughter said next chilled my bones. According to her, when the girl with the cardboard mask approached them for the first time, she wasn't wearing the mask, so they were able to see her face. As it turns out, she wasn't a girl at all, but an older woman around my age with wrinkles on her face. What's even more disturbing, the old woman had started to steal treats from my daughter's bag, apparently when I wasn't looking. This is why they asked me to go home. The old woman was creeping them out and they wanted to just get away from her. I brought my kids home and told my wife what had happened. We made sure to check through all of their candy but didn't find anything suspicious or off. We didn't call the police or anything, since nothing really happened. But thinking back, I kind of regret that decision now. What the heck was that old woman doing? And who was that man following us around? I don't think I'll ever know. I just think it's sick that there are people out there on Halloween, hiding behind masks, pretending to be children. Last night had to be the most frightening minutes of my life. It's 10:30 p.m. The baby is down for bedtime. I'm in the bedroom trying to fall asleep. Next thing I know, the doorbell rings. It's 10:30 at night. Who the heck is ringing my doorbell? It's going to wake the baby and I'm near angry and a little shaken. I peer through the people and see two men that look like they're in their early to mid-20s. At that point, I just get scared. What are two strangers doing ringing and knocking at 10:30 at night, especially on Halloween night? I froze for a minute and just watched. They kept ringing and knocking. I retreated to the bedroom to grab my phone. I called my fiance, because I'm not smart and should have called the police first, but he doesn't answer as he's asleep and 6 hours away for an FTX. They just keep ringing and knocking for about 5 minutes. They aren't giving up. Some sense kicks in that I should call the police a non-emergency line. I didn't call 911 because I wasn't sure if it qualified as an emergency. I didn't know what they wanted. Right as the dispatcher takes my name and address, they leave. I tell the dispatcher to cancel the report, and he tells me that if they come back, just call 911. I've never been so scared in my life. I'm home alone with the baby while the fiance is away. I've never felt so threatened in my own home. My fiance is hoping that they were either trying to prank someone or that they were drunk trying to get into the wrong apartment. My instinct tells me that they weren't friendly, and my instinct is usually right. I was nearly defenseless in my own home. I'm not about to open the door to two strange people. I'm still shaking today. I don't want to leave the apartment. I really hope they don't come back again. I would rather not have to threaten that I have a weapon, now that I know where it is, and will use it if absolutely necessary as a last line of defense. I would rather not encounter them again. I hope they stay away. First time posting, I had a strange unsolved experience as a kid that has been on my mind a lot lately, and decided that this is a place to share. The first half of the story takes place on Halloween 1991. A quick bit of background. I was a 7-year-old boy at the time and my little sister was only a few months old. I lived in Long Island, New York, on the border area of the town that kind of acted as an unspoken separation between the more affluent area and the lower income, hood type area. My dad owned a bar across from the train station that was extremely popular in the 80s, and was still riding the tail end of that boom. My father did very well for himself. My father and his business were well known around the town. I think this may have had to do with what happened. He eventually squandered everything on a drug addiction, but that's a different story. And for the record, I had nothing but love and respect for him despite this. So, it was Halloween. My mom was working the night shift at my dad's bar. My sister was home with a teenage babysitter. My dad had taken me and my friend trick-or-treating. This was the first year I was able to go out at night, so I was super stoked. When we get home, there are cops at my house. The babysitter is crying and my mom came home. Earlier, while the sitter was alone with my sister, she got a phone call from an unknown woman asking to speak with me. She said that I wasn't there and asked the woman stated that she had a gift for me and would call back. The woman called back a few times saying something similar and she began to insist that she was going to come and deliver her gift. Eventually she called and said to look in the mailbox. This is when the sitter called the police. The police found a pirate skull Halloween decoration that would talk and shake when you clapped, as well as several candy bars. My whole family was really bugged out about this. I was scared, but I also kind of liked the skull thing and convinced my parents after much protest to let me keep it. My parents for a few weeks were on edge after that, and they hated the toy. They tried to work with the police, but there wasn't much they could do, and the whole thing kind of went cold. Fast forward to the following summer, 1992. My best friend and I decided to have a car wash in front of his house, which was diagonally across the street from my house. We had out buckets, soap, a hose, and a sign. You get the picture. This black car rolls up. It was an old 80s Crown Vic or something like that. One of those big cars that steer like a boat. The window rolls down and there's a woman sitting in the driver's seat. She has short white hair. Kinda had this whole Ursula vibe going. I told my parents she was old because of her hair, but looking back, she could have been as young as in her 40s. She says, my name. Do you know who I am? I said no, and she goes, I'm the one who gave you those nice presents on Halloween. My jaw drops and I freeze up just staring. And then like something out of a horror movie, she begins to laugh maniacally and then speeds off. I ran home and told my parents. That was the end of it, and they never figured out who it was. My father had speculated that this person may have believed he was wealthy, and maybe he was trying to get a ransom. Maybe she was a scorned ex-lover. I don't know, I've speculated many things, but will never likely know at this point, as I am now 35 and that was a lifetime ago. Sorry if this story had an underwhelming payoff at the end, but it has bugged me for years and I wanted to share it. In the past year, I've had several of my dad's old friends find and reach out to me on Facebook. My dad and I had the same name and face, so I was easy to find. 2 of them were women. One of them made me a little uncomfortable because she kept pushing to hang out, and she's a lot older than me. Like, go to the bar hangout. I said no, of course, but she asked me a lot of personal questions. And that's what brought the story back to the forefront of my mind. I'm getting a weird feeling in my gut that this woman, or even the other ones on Facebook, is the same woman that stalked me as a child. That thought gives me a chill, but I would really like to know who this person was and why they stalked me. I hope this is the right place for the story. This happened about 12 years ago. I was 16 at the time. It was summer and I was hanging out with my friend Leanne and a guy that I liked, Billy. We were sitting around trying to figure out something fun to do when Billy said, let's go to a haunted house. Leanne and I were goth girls at the time and got really excited by this suggestion. I don't really know what we thought we would do. Maybe sit around in a dark house and talk to ghosts, but we drove an hour to a haunted house. The house sat all alone in a giant field of overgrown grass. I don't remember what time it was, but it was dark and there weren't any streetlights near the house and all the windows were boarded up. We marched through the grass and I, wanting to seem cool, marched to the front door first. Again, wanting to appear cool in front of my crush, I decided to be the one to open the door and go in first. I reached out, the door was unlocked and I pushed it open. It was pitch black inside, I couldn't see into the house at all. It was like a blanket of blackness was in front of me. I then got an eerie feeling, the kind of feeling you get when someone is watching you. I felt like someone was standing in front of me in the blackness. That's when I heard it, just a few feet in front of me. The quiet and steady sound of someone breathing. I lost it. I started screaming and I turned around and ran away. Leanne and Billy started laughing and followed me nonchalantly. I ran all the way back to the car where they both started making fun of me. What was that? Leanne asked. Breathing. I heard breathing. Someone was breathing. You probably heard one of us, said Billy. No, it was in front of me. Someone was breathing. They continued to make fun of me, telling me it was my imagination, but I was adamant. They tried to convince me to go inside with them, but I refused. I was not going in there. I was creeped out and had a very bad feeling. I was not going in that house. After about 20 minutes, they gave up and we all decided on a new plan for the night. A few days later, Leanne approached me. So, I told my mom about that house we went to the other night. She said that house is a well-known squatter house where homeless people, drug addicts, and crazies hang out. I'm so glad we didn't go inside. To this day, I know for a fact someone was standing in front of me. I don't know what would have happened had we gone inside, but I'm so happy we didn't.